generation, they will tell their children of your awesome power, of your mighty acts. They will tell the story of your faithfulness and glory. And we will pass it on to all who yet to come, how you've been slow to anger and also rich in love, and all may celebrate the wonders you have done. Giving you glory, honor, blessing and praise. Together we'll pass it on, the greatness of your ways. Giving you glory, honor, blessing and praise. Together we'll pass it on, the greatness of your ways. Come on, sing it again. Every generation, they will tell their children of your awesome power and of your mighty acts, and they will tell the stories of your faithfulness and glory. Oh yeah, and we will pass it on to all of yet to come, how you've been slow to anger and oh so rich in love, that all may celebrate the wonders you have done. Come on, give him glory, giving you glory, honor, blessing and praise. Together we'll pass it on, the greatness of your way. I'll give you glory, giving you glory, honor, blessing and praise. Together we'll pass it on, the greatness of your ways. Indescribable are all your righteous deeds. Incomprehensible is your unrivaled power, and all your promises will stand eternally. Thank you, Jesus, for upholding those who fall, uplifting those bowed down. You are near to all, when here is you we call. So we now shout your name and celebrate your fame. Come on, let's give him glory, giving you glory, honor, excited. Praise the Lord. Let's bless the
I'm
Lord
excited
this
as well.
morning.
Dear Heavenly Father,
We want to continue to share with you on those same lines. Today's message is entitled, The Gospel of Do Nothing / Everything. Okay? The Gospel of Do Nothing / Everything. So I'd like to kind of like take a review of some of the things that we learned this past week so that we do not forget. We need to continuously keep in remembrance those things that we learned through our special speaker, Pastor Roger Kim from Philadelphia. Well, let's turn to the book of Galatians chapter 1, looking from verse 6 to verse 10. Galatians in the New Testament, chapter 1. Looking from verse 6 to verse 10. Do you know what Galatians is? Galatians is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Acts, Romans, 1st, 2nd Corinthians, and then comes the book of Galatians. Amen. Galatians chapter 1, looking from verse 6 down to verse 10. The Apostle Paul says, as he speaks to the Galatian church, I marvel. He said, I'm so surprised, I'm shocked, in other words, that you are turning away so soon from him who called you in the grace of Christ to a different gospel, which is not another, but there are some who trouble you and want to pervert the gospel of Christ. They want to distort the gospel. But even if we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel to you than what we have preached to you, let him be accursed. And that's a strong word. Not just let him be punished, but let him be accursed. As we have said before, so now I say again, if anyone preaches any other gospel to you than what you have received, let him be accursed. And he says that twice, so you know he's really serious about this, and he's really concerned about the situation, about people listening to another gospel that seems like it's the same gospel, but it's really a different gospel than the gospel of Jesus Christ. For do I now persuade men or God, or do I speak to please men? For if I still please men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ. Here we see Paul's warning against being poisonously influenced and brainwashed by different perverted gospels. In Galatians 3:1, Paul says, O foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? Meaning, who has cast a spell on you to believe in the witchcraft of a different gospel? When we begin to sometimes look into the different gospels that's preached as far as Paul is going to be sharing in the book of Galatians, we think that it's not that bad, but he equates it to the same thing as Satanism, witchcraft. And we need to take this just as serious as we would be appalled and would abhor witchcraft. We should also be appalled with the mixture of the gospel when people pervert the gospel of Jesus Christ. Amen? At this time, this morning, we will share mainly about two different perverted gospels that were prevalent during the days of the Apostle Paul. Believing in another gospel other than the true gospel of Jesus Christ is satanic and religious darkness. As long as Satan can keep us in the dark, and he can keep us in darkness, he is not afraid, because then if we are in darkness, then we can't fight him who is in darkness. Darkness can't defeat darkness. We need to be in the light. Light shatters and defeats darkness. And so Satan's ploy is to keep us somehow deceived and to keep us in the realm of darkness so that we would be powerless against satanic forces. So what is the first perverted gospel that we are going to be talking about? Well, let's just turn here. And here's the gospel. And the gospel that Paul was talking about, the perverted gospel, the first gospel, is really legalism. That's found in the scriptures, legalism. Legalism is, say, pro-law. It promotes the law. It is for the law. And the emphasis is on works, and self-efforts. And then moralism. This is an emphasis on doing things. And so the Galatians got saved through Jesus Christ and they were justified by grace. But after being justified by grace, they began to try to maintain their walk with God by keeping the law, by keeping up with rules and with regulations. And so because of that, they fell into legalism. And if we turn to Galatians chapter 5, let's look at verse 4. Galatians chapter 5 and looking at verse 4. It says here, Galatians 5 and in verse 4, it says, you have become estranged from Christ. In other words, you have become severed from Christ. You've become cut off, separated from Christ. And he's speaking about you who attempt to be justified by what? By law, you see. And that's legalism. They wanted to be justified by the law instead of continuously being justified by only one thing that can justify us, which is what? Grace. But what happened is that they were trying to be justified by law, and Paul says, you have what? Fallen from grace. And so it's not that they lost their salvation, not that they've fallen out of grace, but they've fallen from grace. And so now they're fallen from grace, they're in bondage. And so because of that, when they're in bondage, they're in darkness, they're in mixture, then they become powerless against the works of darkness, against the works of Satan. And so here is legalism, pro-law, emphasizing we got to keep the law, and that's why there's a lot of works and self-efforts. This is where cause and effect comes in. If you have good cause, you do good things, the effect will be that you will have blessings come back to you. If you up your involvement in the things of God, then God will up his involvement in you and cause greater increase of blessings in your life. And so here we would see the principle of sowing and reaping. And then there is moralism here, whereby people live according to right and wrong, according to the religion